Hello and welcome to another episode of our Midweek conversation at First Baptist Sweetwater, where we strive to be the first responders of God's love. My name is Jerry Hendricks, and I'm here with T. Hamilton, who is back from his great expedition to wherever, to the Far East.
Yeah, east of Dallas.
East of Dallas, that is.
We don't really venture that far in Texas.
And you shouldn't.
No, but we did, and it was fun.
Well, I'm glad that you're back, Teak. Hope you had a good trip.
I want to clear something up. I've had two people question our podcast in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they say, why are you and Jerry always making funny faces when the podcast starts? So they're obviously watching on Facebook. And I said, because we're always laughing and having fun. And they were genuinely surprised that we laugh and have fun.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, so we smile and laugh at our job. It's okay, right?
Well, I can guess who those two people were that asked that question.
You probably can. They always want to. They said, one said, was someone else in the room making faces?
Considering the number of listeners that we have,
okay,
it should be able to figure this out.
True. It wasn't Bob Goff.
Oh yeah, well,
no, it wasn't
one of the things that I'm aware of is we have more listeners than we are aware.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot.
Because I've heard people outside our church refer to the phrase "first responders of God's love."
Right.
And so, anyways, thanks for listening in, and we're glad to be a part of your week. Glad that you joined us. Teak is back from a weekend, or not a weekend, but a fishing trip, and so I'm about ready to leave on a basketball trip. So he tapped in, I'm tapping out.
Right.
Yeah, is that right?
Right.
Is that the way we do that?
Yeah, that counts.
Sure. Well, this week we get started with our Wednesday night programming. I'm excited about that and see where this semester leads us. It is frustrating, all the medical complications that people are having with different things, whether it's allergies or COVID or flu. There's just a lot of stuff.
Or Flurona.
Yeah, there's a lot of
things
that are going on, and so it's catching a lot of us. But in spite of all that, we had a really good day Sunday, and got to meet some new folks, and that's always fun when we have that opportunity.
Yeah. We talk about first-time guests a lot, and it is nice to see those coming back.
Right.
So that's good.
Yeah, and then last night we had our first meeting of the year with our leadership, and by leadership, when I refer to that, it's generally, as far as our monthly meetings, it's our deacons and our church council. Mm-hmm. We had a combined meeting last night, and I sort of did a year in review with them and just a little bit of a look forward. So that's pretty much the content that I have for us to talk about today.
Oh, no, we're not going to talk about what happened Sunday or anything like that?
Well, I mean, we can. Yeah, no, it all fits together,
okay,
actually.
Good.
So,
I kind of liked it.
The run, and then so really what we try to do in our podcast in some way is to bridge the conversation from Sunday to Sunday.
Right.
And we do a lot of bantering among that, but that is one of the intents for that. And so at the start of this year, what I wanted to do over these first 3 weeks was to kind of set us up to begin thinking about the opportunity we have in this new year and how different this opportunity is from any other time in our history.
Right.
As we got into it, or as I got into it, and thinking about how we would structure these weeks, you begin to realize that last year from really the first Sunday after Easter, we started talking about our anniversary.
Right.
That was going to be in December of last year, and we spent a lot of time developing or hearing stories, developing opportunities for people to share stories. And so it fit real well, or it has, that reflection of who we've been for 140 years has been helpful in setting the stage for what I feel like is one of the best opportunities our church has for ministry, maybe in our history over this next year. So
fall 2022.
So the thing that I shared Sunday is from a book called When, which is a strange title for a book, but it's this was my second year to read it, so I guess I could say it's my annual reading prior to the new year.
Well, Daniel Pink owes you some money or thank you, because someone's already bought the book based on you mentioning it Sunday.
Right? Well,
I think there's some type of fee in there you should get.
I don't know, maybe so. Well, the so this year I listened to the Audible and purchased the book to kind of get some of the sequencing right in there. And one of the things that caught my attention in listening to it was he talked about beginnings and how important it is to pay attention to or recognize the beginnings in our life. But beginnings aren't something that we can control.
Right.
So the experience of, obviously, as we went into the spring of 2020, we were beginning a new year without any idea of what was going to be handed to us.
Right.
But while we can't determine our beginnings, we can determine how we start. And so starting has become an important part of the way that I think in developing a rhythm for my productivity, my work life, and so forth. And so there are a lot, and I know it's always interesting going into the new year because there are people who kind of act like there's nothing new, but yet you can't deny what's chronologically happened.
Right.
And you have some response to it, whether you say you do or not. So it's not just another day, it's not just another week. There is something that changed. For one, you have to remember to put a new number on things that you date rather than last year's number.
Which isn't as much of a difficulty now because not as many people use checks. Remember all the scratch outs you would do on checks at a new year? Yep, still remember that.
But I date my journal, so every day I write the date down. So
okay, so there you go.
Yeah,
do you ever have any scratch outs?
There's more. I don't think I have this year.
Well done.
Oh no, I did. I put December instead of January.
So it wasn't even the year.
Right.
It was
I go, well, and I remember thinking, oh, that's funny.
Got to say that in a podcast.
The book described 3 parts I felt like apply to the church, and I developed this a little bit further last night with our leadership. That the first part they talked about was starting right, and it's for our church. There's no question that our church has started right and remained healthy and been a strong church for years, even during these periods of decline over the last couple of decades. We've not lost our way.
Right.
And I think the hope of the transition some years ago was that we could steady the course in today's culture and see where that takes us. And so, in essence, you had another opportunity of starting starting right, and we did that, and that had a lot to do with me even entertaining the thought of coming here to be pastor, besides getting to be with you.
Right, because then we would laugh and have fun at work, which is apparently surprising to some.
Yeah, who would have thought you could have fun?
Yeah, especially at work.
And this is worth mentioning for our podcast audience, that I have told Teak repeatedly that no one gets to work with a friend. Right. And I'm the second friend that you've had the opportunity to work with.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
And so I'm going, that just doesn't happen, Teak.
I'm in trouble because I'm getting out of friends.
I want you. No, I think you're fine there. So last night I spent some time talking about what it means to start over, and a lot of it is, and you and I went through this. I started a church,
right,
and I've shared this repeatedly, that it's really different when you sit down and know that you're not just doing church the way that you grew up doing it, or you're doing it the way that the last church you were in, but you had a blank slate, a blank canvas, and so you were going to create that portrait of what you wanted church to be, and then use that as a model for reaching people. And so it began to dawn on me as I got further into this that the pandemic, and we've been all around this as we've kind of reconfigured some of our schedule,
right,
and some of the things that we do, or some of the things that we stopped doing. But it's really that same spirit of starting over,
right.
And I think there's more for us to learn there going into this next year, because there's a spirit about starting over that is easily lost, because starting over takes more energy, takes more resources, and more time,
right,
more creativity. I don't know if I mentioned that one. And so I think that the tendency is always going to be to gravitate back toward what was easiest or what was less concerning as far as effort and rethinking things, and just do what's comfortable. And so and the other thing is we've entered this year starting over in worship. We really started in Advent, and one of the things we talked about in our meetings, few conversations after worship Sunday, is just the difference that we felt in worship because we're starting over, and we had to ask questions that we were not asking before. And so there's a difference in when we think about starting over than restarting the past. And I think I think that organizations, I believe all organizations and a lot of people still struggle with that. But I'm going to go ahead and say that maybe none more than the church.
Oh yeah, probably.
That it's really a strong tendency just to restart the past. And we relive that, and we're fortunate this last year, as much as we were talking about our history, that we didn't belabor that point. We weren't trying to go back, but we were trying to learn from our past experiences to see how we could reach future generations. But
we said all along that if we just rush through pandemic trying to get back to what we would previously been doing, then you miss an opportunity that God's given us through pandemic. And that's putting pandemic in a positive light. That we have the opportunity now to start over, to start fresh.
Well, and I think it's one of those things that caused me to be strangely optimistic. And I have shared, I guess, here about the looking towards the fall of 22, that kind of being that key point in our timeline where we really, at that point, start to figure out how things are going to go. But if we're not doing anything until then, just waiting to see what happens, then it's going to be the same.
Exactly.
And so the next part of the starting was starting together. And so really on this coming Sunday, which will be my last Sunday to speak for a while because of our Summit series, but I'm going to talk about the importance of starting together and explore some of the things that we're going to ask people to do. And that's one of the key things that I shared with leadership, and I will repeat throughout this year, is that we would need to ask and not assume. And whether that's whether a person or a friend is going to church or they're not coming to church for a certain reason, we don't know unless we ask. And now is a time to really clarify and to help people to take whatever that next step is. And we're not forcing people or pushing people, because we've been very good, I feel like, as a church about being cautious and respectful of what's going on in our world and respectful of people. But at the same time, I think a higher degree of respecting someone is finding out how they're doing. And letting them know that they are missed, and that we hope that there's a time when they rejoin us so that we can be together.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that, as far as like seeing where people are, checking on them, making sure they're okay, and inviting them back, because sometimes it's easier to stay away from church just because you've gotten the habit of it. Whereas you have to go back to your job, you have to go back to school, things like that. And so it is a good conversation to have. And I don't think it's a intimidating conversation to have, because hopefully you have a relationship with the person you're asking. And then the whole sermon or conversation you started last week or Sunday, 2 days ago, what I really enjoyed about it was that it had this corporate side to it, but also had an individual side to it. So talking about the church, we're talking a lot about that over the last 3 weeks, or we're in the middle of 3 weeks. But then looking at your own life, what am I starting over in, and how does that go into starting together with the church?
And I think, and it is coming back to the very beginning of this, it is a natural time to ask that question, regardless of whether or not you are a resolutionist or not. And as evidence Sunday, I think people, they start thinking about things that maybe they have neglected. We just evaluate different during these different beginning opportunities. So anyways, I'm looking forward to Sunday, being able to share with you a little bit more. about this process and what we're looking forward to in the next year. And then coming up soon after that will be the next Sunday, actually, the 23rd. We'll have our first ever Summit series, and I'm excited about that for the life of our church, and also be able to hang out with Miles for 3 Sundays.
And the not chili cook-off.
Yes, the uncook-off chili luncheon.
Yeah. With bragging rights.
I don't know if you figured out, but I'm trying to think of a different way to say that each week.
Yeah, I don't know that it gets through. I think some really still understand the chili cook-off, and I might be one of those.
Well, what if we this is what it is. It's an upward chili cook-off. Everyone gets a trophy.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Upward bound.
And we may edit that from the podcast. I'm not sure.
No, we won't.
No, we won't. Anyways, thanks for letting us be a part of your week. Thanks for listening, and thanks for the feedback. We'll keep trying to improve this podcast for the fun of it, and maybe for your listening.
Yes.
We look forward to seeing you Sunday.
See you then.